On today's show, the very latest of the Capitals acquisition of CapFriendly.com.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the big news that the Capitals acquired CapFriendly.com. Who knew that was even for sale? That was the big news that broke over the weekend, and I'll give you the very latest on that. A little bit later, we will talk about the insiders' thoughts on that. I'm talking Frank Saravalli, Elliot Freeman, Jeff Merrick, and what this means for the NHL at large. And then in the final segment, Gil of the Power Play Point podcast joins me once again as we talk about future players and what they will mean for this team. But just to get it going here, talking about the big move that, to be honest with you, I did not see coming. I don't think anybody saw coming that the Capitals acquired CapFriendly.com. My phone blew up over the weekend, and I thought, well, here's Brian McClellan. He's going out and he's signing this big player, or there's some other big news surrounding the Capitals organization. I definitely did not think that was the news that was going to be broke. But the one thing I'm going to go ahead and say about Ted Leonsis and Monumental is that when they set their mind to doing something, generally speaking, they get it done. It doesn't matter how high the goal is, they get it done. I guess you could rule out the relocation and acquiring the Washington Nationals so far, but you just want to take a look at what they did with NBC Sports Washington and acquiring the rights for the Washington Capitals games. They took on all their broadcasters and a bunch of their writers that who knew that was even an option? Like, this is who broadcasts the game. Yeah, I think I'm going to buy that. CapFriendly.com, the premier site for salary cap information. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and acquire that. So, hats goes off to Ted Leonsis and Monumental for getting something done like that. Again, it's just, us regular people that work 9-to-5 jobs, we don't live in that realm. We don't know that it's even possible to go out and acquire things that who knew were even for sale in the first place. They did, and they got it done. And like I say, quite stunning. And if you're not familiar with what CapFriendly is a widely used website that provides comprehensive information on salary cap data and player transactions across the league. So it's going to be interesting what that means for other teams. It will be available through July 5th. So it can be used through free agency as a tool. But after that, all the tools that go with it, the personnel, will be at the Capitals' disposal. As a Capitals fan, I love this. If I'm not a Capitals fan, I might be like, what in the heck? Those Capitals, I tell you. But that was a big news that was breaking over the weekend. I mean, the hockey world was shocked as the Capitals announced their surprising acquisition of the popular hockey website CapFriendly for being a go-to resource for the NHL executives, fans, and media to track contracts and salaries. CapFriendly will be purchased by the Capitals, owned by Monumental Sports and Entertainment. The deal is expected to close next month after the upcoming NHL draft and the start of free agency. The Capitals plan to integrate CapFriendly's data tools and employees into their in-house hockey operations. However, once the integration is complete, the public-facing site is expected to cease to exist due to the incorporation of confidential league information. And that kind of ties in with what I was talking about. Who knew this was for sale? And who knows how to go out and buy something like that? Quite a coup, quite a stunning thing for the Capitals to accomplish. Again, I was like, wow, a head scratcher. Like, wow, I didn't even know that was a possibility. This unexpected acquisition has had far-reaching effects, impacting not only fans and media members, but also several NHL teams that had contracts with CapFriendly. These teams have recently received notices that their contracts would be terminated. So that's the bad part. I have already heard a lot of negative comments from NHL fans at large, like, what's going on, the Capitals? And a lot of comments that I can't repeat on a family show such as this. But in any event, a good move for the Capitals. It's good to bring everything that is under CapFriendly when they're talking about salary contracts, when they talk about the draft from time to time, that they have all of that under the monumental banner. Quite a thing. Dominic Zrim, co-owner and director of CapFriendly, previously held roles in the NHL front office, adding further intrigue to the acquisition, while several other NHL teams reportedly expressed interest in acquiring CapFriendly. The Capitals have succeeded in sealing the deal. CapFriendly specializes in salary cap and player information, providing valuable insights to franchises as they evaluate their player development, signing, and scouting, as well as that of their rivals. So quite an accomplishment, quite something for the Capitals to have at their disposal. And when you are a billionaire, you can do billionaire stuff. And that was definitely the case as Ted Leonsis really kind of made his mark and said, "How like me now?" The rest of the other owners in the NHL, how about that? Quite a stunning move. Monumental, led by billionaire Ted Leonsis, also owns the NBA's Wizards, the WNBA's Mystics, Capital One Arena, Monumental Sports Network, and a number of development and esports teams. With the purchase of CapFriendly, the Capitals are set to strengthen their position in the world of analytics. And that's the way things are going. If you want to talk about betting and that kind of thing, that oftentimes they go to these analytical websites, for over-unders, for favorites. I'm not a big online gambler, I'm going to be honest with you. But those kind of things, if you want to bet on games, if you want to bet on who is going to score the first goal, who's going to score the last goal, who's going to win by this point, that point, that if you can go into the weeds a little bit with some of the analytics websites like CapFriendly, are very important if you are involved in that realm. The recent acquisition of CapFriendly by the Washington Capitals has sent, quite a message to everyone around the league that, hey, that is a fire across the bow of a lot of different teams. That it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this all plays out. But that is the latest that we know right now, that it is going to be available to the NHL at large through July 5th. And after that, well, the website as we know it is going to go dark, and it is going to be in the exclusive control of the Washington Capitals. As a Capitals fan, I'm very happy, of course, that they have another toy to play with, I guess. But if I had to really pick, I wish they would have gone out and used some of that money that, was probably quite a bit of money, and picked up a big name player. I mean, if you're going to ask me, would you rather the Capitals go out and buy CapFriendly.com, which, let's be honest, who knew that was a thing, or go out and buy a big scoring forward or a big blue liner? I think as a fan which direction I would go. But it's going to be interesting to see. Ted Leonsis, billionaires don't get to be billionaires on accident. He obviously has a long history of making good decisions. I think that this is something that won't be fully appreciated for years to come. But as of right now, again, it's like going out and buying something like just a building that who knew was for sale. Who goes out and buys a website like this? A stunning move, a big move for the Capitals. I think, like I said, it's something that won't be fully realized until we can kind of look back on it retrospectively, like this came out of that and those kind of things. And sometimes it takes a while to appreciate those kind of things, but a big move for the Capitals and a really powerful tool moving forward. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about the insiders, the premier insiders, Frank Saravalli, Jeff Merrick, Elliot Friedman. What were their thoughts on all of this? I'll discuss straight ahead. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And it's not just NBA tickets, it's MLB tickets, it's Nationals tickets. And say you had planned on buying tickets, but life is busy and you forgot to get them. Fear not, as prices are actually cheaper closer to first pitch or tip-off. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets or MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So talking CapFriendly.com and the Capitals and Monumentals acquisition of that website, CapFriendly.com. Again, quite a move for the Capitals, and I think that it will be a while before we see the value fully realized, but it can do nothing but help the team. And as professional sports in general keeps going more and more towards analytics, as we see more of that analytics needed for online betting. As we know, that is what fuels most every professional sport, and more websites are out there for online betting. So that's part of the equation. That is, I think, something that's not spoke of about this, but also it's about the value that the Capitals will have for everything that is under the CapFriendly umbrella, from personnel to computer data. All of that will be at the Capitals' disposal. And in the first segment, I gave you my thoughts on what we know about CapFriendly.com and the acquisition by the Capitals, but what do the premier insiders think about the move, and what will it mean for the NHL at large? Well, Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman of the 32 Thoughts podcast weighed in on it. Insights from Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman were shed light on the motivation behind the Capitals' purchase. They suggest the acquisition was primarily driven by internal operational needs rather than financial gain. I think it's a little bit too early to know that, but that is where they weigh in. Merrick explained that the decision to buy CapFriendly stemmed from the desire to obtain a similar tool without investing time and resources in developing it independently. Meanwhile, Friedman emphasized the purchase includes not only the tools, but also the underlying infrastructure and the addition of new employees to manage it internally. And that's a pretty astute observation, I think, by Jeff Merrick, is that why go out and develop all this? Why not just buy something if you have the money to buy something that's already in place? Pretty intelligent by the Capitals, all things considered. Friedman elaborated on the regulatory aspect, highlighting the NHL's disapproval of publicly sharing detailed salary cap information, deeming it as proprietary and sensitive. The pending change has left several teams seeking alternative resources to fulfill their ongoing need for accurate salary cap information. And it's something that people have said, well, why doesn't everyone just know what this is? No, it's something that you can go to at a moment's notice and find out where a team is, how much over, how much under they are, how much, this player getting added to this team is going to factor in Tools like this are invaluable and quite, something that is important and more important as we go along in professional sports. You take a look at 20 years ago, you didn't hear a lot of talk about it. It didn't really exist. But as the evolution of technology in sports and on online betting, that is where stuff like this gets pushed into the forefront. In light of this development, alternative platforms such as Puckpedia and SportTrack are expected to become prominent alternatives and will likely experience increased traffic from teams, fans, and reporters. The significant impact of CapFriendly's closure is anticipated to affect various stakeholders, including fans, media, and league personnel, particularly during the crucial offseason period. Teams will need to swiftly adapt to utilizing alternative resources to navigate the remainder of the offseason successfully. And there are other options, and Puckpedia and SportTrack are just right up there as well. I just think that for whatever reason, maybe that CapFriendly wanted to sell. And, you take a look at Ted Leonsis. He had the money to acquire it. Why not win for the Capitals, win for CapFriendly? But, I guess it's maybe not as much of a win if you're not a part of the Capitals organization. Yesterday, the Washington Capitals made that big news. And then today on the Daily Faceoff, Frank Saravalli explained why it made sense for the Capitals to purchase CapFriendly. Frank Saravalli said, "It's a sad day in the hockey world that we will see the closure of CapFriendly at the end of the month. This is a resource I have used 20 to 25 times a day." So for people that are like, well, who really uses it 20 to 25 times a day? And as a casual fan, maybe you're not using that that often, but there is a lot of insiders. There's a lot of GMs. There's a lot of people in general that use capfriendly.com. Again, Frank Saravalli, 20 to 25 times a day. He's one man. Magnify that, multiply that, you see the value of that resource. A resource for multiple teams, GMs, agents, players, and stakeholders of the game. That's the go-to website, Saravalli said. The two brains behind the whole operation, Dominic Zerum and Jamie Davis, have done such an unbelievable service to the hockey industry. Frank Saravalli goes on to say, so why does it make sense for the Capitals? First off, I don't have all the details as things have been quiet, but if I'm looking at it from the Capitals' perspective, it's how can I tap into these two brains of the guys who have done a wonderful job behind the scenes with CapFriendly. The second part is that we have the Capitals, and what would they be, and what is that going to mean for the team going forward? So it's something that, can't maybe be quantified at this moment. It's just something that when you look at the acquisition, like that got a lot better. So as you take a look at it, I think that it's going to help in the acquisition of players and, the analytical aspect of things like that. But it's something that I don't think maybe as a casual fan, it's fully realized or understood. But I think in time we will. And it's just, pick any website. It's like when someone went out or, to buy Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. It's like, who goes out and does that? Well, Ted Leonsis does things like that, and he went out and bought CapFriendly, and I think the Capitals will be the better for it. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about the Capitals' future with Gil of the Power Play Point podcast, talking about what players will really stand out and what they'll mean for this team. We'll discuss straight ahead. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives you a family of financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. And it's one of the things that I took care of with life insurance. As you know, I have a wife, I have kids, and in the unfortunate event that something had happened to me, I would like them to be prepared, and they will be, thanks to life insurance and companies like Policygenius. So check that off your list if you've been putting it off. Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it that may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to Policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's Policygenius.com. We're talking in this episode with Gil of the Power Play Point podcast. So there's one thing that we've talked about in this show is the present. And, the present, there's a lot of question marks. We don't know. But if we can lift our heads up to the horizon a little bit, I see Ryan Leonard. I see Andrew Crystal. I see even Miroshnichenko, that I think the future is really, really bright. How excited are you about seeing Ryan Leonard in a Capitals jersey in the regular season? That makes me feel like pounding Capitals Kool-Aid and getting crazy. What do you think?
Definitely. I think if there's one thing to be excited, and there's many facets of his game. But if you're a Capitals fan, you need to be excited about Ryan Leonard mainly because of his attitude towards the game. There's two ways of looking at it. If you're in it long term and you want to win a championship and get your name on that cup, you can either love to win or hate to lose. Ryan Leonard loathes losing. It was etched on his face this year when his team did not finish on top in the Frozen Four. When USA didn't win the gold in the World Juniors when he was there. He hates to lose, absolutely loathes it. And I think, unfortunately, that's just been a trait that's just been lacking on this Caps team. So if you're going to get excited about a guy, it's him for sure. And from what I've seen in training camp, he's already developed something of a bit of a bond with Miroshnichenko and some of the other prospects. So one day down the line, he's even going to be captain material. I would dare say he's probably going to be, there's been comparisons to TJ Oshie and Tom Wilson. You want a real comparison? Now, I get this is from an old-time Caps fan. The guy he's probably going to emulate a lot more than anybody else, Dale Hunter. And if you've ever seen him play, then you know what I'm talking about. Be excited for that. That's the element that he's going to bring to the Washington Capitals. And that's why I think we when we talked about it earlier, what deals would you make? Probably above all else, any deal that would involve him, any team asking for him, you immediately reject the deal. You cannot hope to get back to where you are or where you were without a Ryan Leonard. So any packaging that requires him in return, you have to reject that deal.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm like, the only thing I would consider, Connor McDavid. Okay, let me think about that. Or Connor Bedard, something like that. But anything else, I'm not going to get crazy. We've seen historically what has happened, with Philip Forsberg and those kind of deals. So talking about it, him as the player that, like we talked about, there's been some comparisons out there to Tom Wilson. I think it's the snarl to his game. I think he's a guy that likes to get the greasy goals. I think he's a guy that's growing into his body. If we remember Tom Wilson, when he first joined the league, he kind of wasn't quite as hulking as he is right now. So it is quite a thing to think about as Tom Wilson, who I think is going to be the next captain of the team. Tom Wilson and Ryan Leonard on the same team together. That is something to get excited about. And talking about Leonard here, he has killed it at every stop at Boston College. Just killing it. And we saw what he did at the World Juniors. We saw what he did at the World Championships. But now the pressure is on Leonard because Will Smith, he's going to be playing for the Sharks. One of his line mates is not going to be there anymore. Do you think that he is going to cave to our perceived pressure, or do you think he will play for Boston College, or do you think that there is the possibility he joins the Capitals?
Well, So here's the dynamic that's probably going to affect all of that entire scenario. It's going to hinge, I think, upon what TJ Oshie ultimately decides. The reason I say that is because, well, I think anybody with eyes saw that when TJ Oshie was out of the lineup, this team was a different team, and it was not a team that belonged in the playoffs. It was not a winning team. It was barely a competitive team. So that's going to be something they'll need to consider. And if TJ Oshie decides, well, you know what? I've thought about it long and hard. I can't go anymore. I'm going to retire or put me on LTIR, whatever you got to do, but I cannot go this last year of my contract. So him being the you know least replaceable commodity, the closest thing you've got is Ryan Leonard that is on your payroll right now. So management won't have any choice but to turn up the heat and say, "Hey, you know what? We'll break the bank for you if we have to within the rules and such, but you got to at least come up and commit to us." And I think ultimately that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and Brian McClellan has said as much. I think it was the press conference after Kuzi went into the players' assistance program. The topic switched a little bit to Ryan Leonard, and they asked him, when do you think he's going to be ready? And he said, when do I think he's ready? I thought he was ready when I saw him in camp last season. That ultimately, whenever he said he's ready to go, he's going to go. And he did say that he wants to play his sophomore season with Boston College. Again, that was before we found out that Will Smith is joining the Sharks, which is going to be this is going to sound funny. The Sharks are going to be pretty good with Celebrini at number one. That's going to be a good Sharks team. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm not going to etch their name in the side of the Stanley Cup, but they are going to be markedly better. That is for sure. So talking about other prospects, Andrew Crystal, who's a little bit more raw, shall we say. He's the guy that I hear kind of goes for the cutesy pass. He has to work on his skating a little bit. But let me talk to me about Andrew Crystal. How far away do you think he is from joining the Capitals, or is that still kind of a pipe dream at this point?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Crystal. He's actually committed now to his professional contract. He's actually now, as I understand it, a black ace on the Hershey Bears. So
I think he got released from that, but he was, yeah. But I mean, when do you think he's going? When do you think he'll be ready for prime time with the Capitals, shall we say?
he's probably at least a year away. Um, if indeed he does end up going back to junior, then that's where he'll stay for another year. Um, or perhaps Hershey for however long. I don't see him making the Capitals for at least 1 year, probably two. Um, I've heard a lot of good things about him, but not unlike most 18 or 19-year-olds. He's got some physically growing to do, and you know until that's done, then he won't be rounded out. It won't even begin to round out as a player. So at least 1 year, probably more.
And I think he does, with that said, I do think that he will be a future star for this team. I know that kind of goes back and forth. I think he has the raw potential. I think that he's still just a little bit young. I think he's working on his game. But, I think if he had some time to simmer down in Hershey and work on his game, I think that could be an absolute game changer for him. Listen, Gil, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. Why don't you tell everyone about your podcast and where we can find your work?
Pleasure. And so, yes, thanks again, Dan, for having me on. Yes, we're the Power Play Point podcast. So, unlike Dan, we're kind of taking a bit of a summer hiatus now. Should there be any big scale news about a free agent signing or anything that happens at the draft, we might do a special episode, but we're pretty much on off-season hiatus until about training camp. But again, we're called the Power Play Point Podcast. Podbean is our main distributor. We can be found on just about any distribution channel there is: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, we're on Spotify. You can stream us there. So just look us up, and you'll be able to find us. During the regular season, we usually record Sunday evenings, and we have an open door for any Caps fan that wants to come on with us and talk Caps hockey.
All right. I want to thank Gil for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. Make sure and check out his podcast called the Power Play Point Podcast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And I want to thank you for joining me once again on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.